So the first step in reframing is choosing a topic that you want to think differently about, a topic that you want to change your perspective on, something that you want to do differently in your life. And it's easier to start with something negative, something that bothers you, something that irritates you, that you'd like to change, something that frustrates you, the feeling that you're banging your head against the wall and you're not getting anywhere. And also, perhaps you're really in deep pain about something. When you're in deep pain, you really want to change it because everything is better than what you have now. So irritation, frustration, deep pain are all great ways to start to reframe. And the reframe topic doesn't have to be complicated. We're all in the same position. We're all human. We all have to live in this society. So something like I'm too busy, I'm overwhelmed by the work I need to do, or I'm too tired, or people don't accept me for who I am, or whatever. Something really, really simple, something really basic is a great way to start, because we're going to analyze why that is. And you can start with what we call a core belief, something that you believe. I'm not good enough, or people don't like me, or something like that. But you could also start with a situation. I don't have enough money, or something like that, and choose something that is quite specific and in less than 10 words. So the examples that we've had are, my son plays computer games 5 hours a day, and that's a problem. That's a frustration for this woman. I'm not good enough. That young lady. I get irritated by people using cell phones on public transport, or I'm afraid to walk in my neighborhood at night, or it could be, I don't have a girlfriend or a boyfriend. It's hard for me to get a date. Or it could be I don't have enough money. But for this example, let's choose something that a lot of us are suffering from. I am too busy. So step 2 in reframing is to analyze our assumptions. Why do we think what we think? Why are we in the situation we're in? In order to do that, let's try to find the assumptions underlying our core belief, or the reasons underlying our situation. Now we say, map your assumptions. An assumption is a deliberately vague word, because it could be a reason, it could be a cause, it could be somehow related to it, it could even be a consequence. What is the family of issues that have to do with, I am too busy? Let's try and see if we can map those issues, and see how many we have. The topic that we started off with, the core belief is, I'm too busy. Now, why am I too busy? I'm too busy because I do many different things. I'm too busy because I can't say no to requests. What other reasons do we have? I'm too busy because everything needs to be perfect. I'm too busy because I'm doing too many projects at once. I'm too busy because I'm not really quite sure what I should be doing. So when you have a few, ask yourself, do I have the most important ones? Is it complete? Are these all the reasons why I am too busy? Am I forgetting something? And something that we often forget is very obvious. Something that is so obvious that we would never write it down. Of course. I'm also doing everybody else's work. Oh, yes. Well, that's obvious. No, if you don't write it down, if we don't put it down as an assumption for our way of thinking, then we can't change it. So think of the really obvious ones involved. For example, my work is never finished, or I have to do other people's work, or really, I have to do other people's work is, no one else can do my job. That's a deep belief that I have about my job. No one else can do my job. So when we have mapped these assumptions, and we have 6 or 8 or 10, we need to choose the 4 most important ones, the 4 pillars on which our current situation rests. And we can do that by just choosing the 4 most important ones, or we can cluster them. Now in this case, some of them are actually quite repetitive, and some of them are related to each other. For example, I do too many different things, and I'm doing too many projects at once or related. I can't say no to requests is one that's by itself. Everything needs to be perfect, and my work is never finished or also related. And then finally, there's a cluster around. I have to do other people's work. No one else can do my job, and I'm not sure about what I should be doing. If we reduce these four clusters to the four most important reasons why I'm too busy, I could come up with, I'm too busy because I do too many different things, because I can't say no to requests, because everything needs to be perfect, and because no one else can do my job. And here we've now done step 2. We've analyzed why we do the things that we do. So now we've established our current frame. We're going to reframe. And this is step 3. This is the most important step. In step 3, we're going to construct extreme opposites. We're going to force ourselves to think the extreme opposite of what our assumptions are. This is actually quite tricky because there's going to be resistance. Let me give you an example. We were once doing it with a group of people, and this woman said as an assumption, flying is bad for the environment. I said, what is the opposite? She said, well, there isn't one. I said, well, you know. What about flying is good for the environment? She said, oh, but that's not true. I said, well, it doesn't matter if it's true or not. Could you just write it down on this post-it? And she said, no. You could see resistance at work. We think flying is bad for the environment. We think that flying is good for the environment is not possible. So we're not going to write it down, but we need to construct the opposite, not just the normal opposite. Flying is good for the environment. We actually have to make it extreme. Flying is great for the environment. Flying is absolutely the best thing for the environment. Eco-warriors fly all the time. So we force ourselves to think something laughable, something ridiculous, something absurd, and then we're outside of our frame. Then we can start thinking to ourselves, how do we construct a world in which eco-warriors can fly? How can we construct a world in which flying is great for the environment? Because it's the opposite assumption of what we all believe at the moment, namely that flying is bad for the environment. But if we let our emotions stop us from writing it down, because it's not true, if we let our emotions stop us from formulating the extreme opposite, then we will always remain stuck in our current frame. So let's now apply this to our example. We had 4 assumptions, for reasons for being too busy. Let's take them one by one and construct the extreme opposite. The first assumption was, I do too many different things. The simple opposite is, I don't do too many different things. Let's write it down. We could also play on the word different. I do many of the same things. How could we make that more extreme? If we do many of the same things, we just do one thing. I just do one thing. That's a pretty extreme opposite, but it's still not funny. How could we make it laughable or ridiculous? Like the Don Corleone example of the elderly man afraid to go out. What is an image of somebody who just does one thing? For example, a one-trick pony. Somebody who is good at one thing. Usually that's a negative, but maybe we could be proud of being a one-trick pony. This is what I'm good at. This is my thing. So we go from I do too many things to I'm a one-trick pony. The second assumption is, I can't say no to requests. A lot of us face this. The grammatical opposite would be, I can say no to requests. We could also change the word no into yes. So, I can't say yes to requests. Keep the can in there. Don't change the negative twice. I can't say no to requests becomes I can't say yes to requests. To make it more extreme, you never say yes to requests. Yes is not in your vocabulary. An extreme way to formulate this. Whatever the request, the answer is no. Whatever the question, the answer is no. While you're formulating the question, the answer is no. That's an extreme opposite. From I can't say no to requests to I always say no to requests. The third assumption was, everything needs to be perfect. Many of us are perfectionists. The grammatical opposite is, everything does not need to be perfect. Let's make that stronger. Nothing needs to be perfect. And if nothing needs to be perfect, then everything needs to be imperfect. Now this imperfect, if we wanted to make everything imperfect, we could just make everything just good enough. Just squeezing by. The weird assumption behind thinking that everything needs to be perfect Is that everything needs to be a 10 out of 10? But what if the thing you're doing is just a pass, fail? What if it doesn't matter if it's done well? The only thing that matters is if it is done at all. So it's only a pass or fail. You only need a 6 out of 10 to get it done. Next, you're going to focus on getting a 7 or an 8 or a 9 or preferably a 10 out of 10. You're going to waste a huge amount of time because you're trying to do it perfectly when it doesn't need to be. All that needs to happen is that it gets done at all. So the opposite extreme would be that everything needs to be good enough. And then you could just ask yourself every time, what can I get away with? What is the minimum that I can get away with? And the antidote to this perfectionism, the antidote to everything needs to be perfect is, what can I get away with? So the fourth and final assumption is, no one else can do my job. Many of us think that too. So the opposite would be, everyone else can do my job. Let's make that more extreme. Everyone else can do my job better than I can. In fact, they're much better at it. So if everyone else can do my job better, perhaps I shouldn't do my job at all. If it's better that I don't do my job, perhaps I should delegate everything. I should delegate everything. Is the antidote to no one else can do my job. Many of us do too many things. We micromanage other people's stuff. We do everything instead of delegating it to the people who could do it just as well. The assumption is often that I can do it better than they can. So instead of thinking that, think they can do it better. Everybody else can do my job better than I can. So I need to delegate everything. In step 3, we construct the extreme opposites. And we do it in stages. First, we look at the grammatical opposite by putting no or not in the sentence. Then we've looked at the words and taken the opposite of the word. When it was no, we turned it into yes. When it was perfect, we turned it into imperfect. Even if the opposite of the word doesn't exist, you can construct it. You can invent a new word, because a new word will be a new frame. People haven't thought about this, because they haven't made a word for it. We've also tried to make it extreme. We've tried to make it ridiculous. We didn't say it has to be imperfect. Some of the time. We said all the time. We've made it stronger. We've made it more extreme. We don't just do one thing. We're a one-trick pony. We've tried to find a ridiculous example of someone who focuses on one thing. We've taken something seen as negative, a one-trick pony, and turned it into something positive. So really, we're forcing ourselves to get out of our way of thinking. We're forcing ourselves to think of eco-warriors saving the environment by taking a lot of flights. We are trying to come up with something that is really quite ridiculous. I say no to everything. I delegate everything, etc. The important thing is not to worry that the things you're writing down are true, because then all the emotional resistance will come up. Make your steps visible. Do it step by step. Take the opposites. Take all the words and turn them into opposites. Find different ways of making it extreme. So there is a problem in this part of the exercise, which I call the intelligent people problem. Intelligent people think, I can do the steps in my head. And this is the radical extreme, because they're intelligent. Sometimes these radical extremes are quite interesting. But the problem is, if they can formulate it in one go, they already have it in their head. They've come up with a cute exercise, but haven't gone somewhere they didn't know. They haven't gone somewhere new. When I do the reframe, I force myself to follow the steps, one by one, to think of all the opposites of the words, to think of complete extremes, until I find something so ridiculous I laugh. If you're laughing, if you're chuckling, if you think this is the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard, you're on the right track. So now we've arrived at step 4. We have all the reframed extreme opposites of our assumptions. And here, we are going to choose the most exciting one, the one that's most ridiculous, the one that's most made you change your mind. So you take for each of the four assumptions. You take the reframed assumption that has made the highest impact on you, and you put it on top of all the other ones, so that eventually you have for initial assumptions and for reframed assumptions. So let's look at our example. We started off with a core belief: I'm too busy. Now I'm too busy because I do too many different things, because I can't say no to requests, because everything needs to be perfect, and because no one else can do my job. And the most extreme opposites, the ones that we thought were most interesting, were these ones. I do too many different things. I'm a one-trick pony. I can't say no to requests. Whatever the request, the answer is no. Everything needs to be perfect. What can I get away with? And no one else can do my job is. I delegate everything. Now the question to ask yourself is, what if these four reframed assumptions were true? They're probably not true at the moment, but what if they were true? So what if I'm a one-trick pony, and whatever the request, the answer is no, and I always ask myself, what can I get away with? And I always delegate everything. What kind of person am I if I do these for things? And I think I would be somebody who is an expert at saving their time. So the total reframe is we've gone from I'm too busy to how can I be an expert at saving my time? And you will notice that this is not the exact opposite. Otherwise we would have had I'm too busy, I'm not too busy. Doing the exercise has given us a different perspective. It has made us think of somebody who is really an expert at saving their time, because they do the opposite. They use a strategy which is the opposite of their current assumptions. So how could you become an expert at saving your time? By using these for reframed strategies. Let's move on to step 5. Because now you've looked at your core belief. You've looked at your situation, and you have reframed it. You have a new perspective, a radically new perspective. But how are you going to change the new way of thinking into a new way of behaving, into different actions? And rather than to change the whole thing wholesale, what you really want to do is to change it step by step. You want to design an experiment where you can try out doing things according to your reframed assumption. So take one of the reframed assumptions that we had. I can't say no to requests. And we've reframed that into whatever the request, the answer is always no. So we need to learn how to say no. So choose a specific time and place. When you're going to do that, choose the next time somebody asks you something, you're going to say no. Whatever the request. Or you could think of a specific person who always asks you to do a lot of things. The next time they are going to come up to you and say, could you do this for me? You will say no. Now the most important thing is that you have the experience of saying no. Now let me tell you a little bit about my life, because I always found it very, very hard to say no. And I've spent quite a lot of time reframing that. When I first started to say no, my brain would tell my mouth to say no, but it actually came out as a yes. So people would say, great, thanks for doing that. And I would think, why is my mouth sabotaging my brain? But maybe my conviction wasn't strong enough. So then I got a little bit stronger. And I actually said no. But apparently I said no in such a way that people still thought I said yes. They said, great, thanks for doing it. I said, but I actually said no. And then they were very surprised. What do you mean you said no? I said no. And they said, but you never say no. People are so used to you behaving according to a certain pattern, to a certain script, that they're really surprised when you deviate from that script. So when you decided to make a new script for yourself, a new way of being in the world, and you say no, don't be surprised if people act strangely. So when you start to say no, do it step by step. Start with people that are easy to say no to, or in a situation where you actually feel quite comfortable, and then gradually expand it to different situations. or people that are harder to say no to, like your boss. Do it in a cumulative experiment, where you try this first, and when it works, try it again. Now there's a wonderful book by William Ury called The Power of Positive No, because whenever you say no to something, you are in fact saying yes to something else. You're saying yes to something that you choose. You're saying yes to something that you want to do with your time. And perhaps that can help you. If you don't want to be the kind of person that says no, realize that behind every no to a request, there is a yes to something else that you believe is more important